Picture this: a world where a single, split-second miscalculation could trigger an absolute human catastrophe. We're talking about the ultimate, high-stakes reality of global security here. A scenario where a nuclear detonation doesn't just wipe out a city, but literally plunges the entire planet into a nuclear winter, leading to agricultural collapse and decades of environmental devastation. It's a heavy topic, right? Well, hello and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a really fascinating geopolitical tightrope: India's strategic stance on nuclear disarmament. Let's get right into it. So, here is the million-dollar question, and it's a massive, real-world problem. How in the world do you achieve a completely nuclear-free world when the countries right next door to you are actively expanding their own arsenals? It's the ultimate contradiction in modern international relations. On one hand, you absolutely have to advocate for global peace. But on the other hand, you have an immediate, undeniable need to build a defensive deterrent to protect yourself. This balancing act, that's the paradox we're going to master today. Before we dive into the heavy geopolitics, let's zoom out. Why does total global disarmament matter so much? Honestly, it isn't just some abstract talking point for politicians. It's literally an existential necessity for human survival. Think about the analytical layers here. Immediately, you're looking at a massive humanitarian crisis with severe radiation sickness and profound ethical devastation. Environmentally, we're talking about that nuclear winter where smoke blocks the sun and crops just stop growing. And economically, keeping these massive arsenals is a huge drain. It diverts billions and billions of dollars away from things that actually help people, like poverty alleviation and fighting climate change. The stakes could not be higher.
Okay, to help us systematize all these complexities, here is our game plan for today. We'll cover the disarmament dilemma, India's core nuclear posture, the dual approach paradox, geopolitical and security challenges, the strategic way forward, and then we'll lock it all in with a final mastery review.
All right, let's start with Section 1, the disarmament dilemma, and how we navigate a fundamentally flawed global system. What's really wild here is the massive gap between what the world wants and what the world actually has. The big utopian goal is the complete abolition of nuclear weapons, zero weapons. But the reality? That's governed by the Non-Proliferation Treaty, or the NPT. Now, India has famously refused to sign the NPT. Why? Simply put, because the system is completely discriminatory. Think of it like an exclusive VIP club. The treaty allows the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the P5, to keep their vast arsenals while forcing everyone else to permanently give up their right to have them. India's argument is basically, you cannot build a genuinely secure world if the foundation is built on structural inequality. Makes sense, right? Moving on to Section 2, India's core nuclear posture. We're looking at a shield, not a sword. So, how does India actually respond to that global inequality? The absolute cornerstone of their defensive framework is the no first use, or NFU, policy. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a strict, formal pledge to never, ever be the first one to push the button in a conflict. But, and this is a big but, it explicitly reserves the right to launch a devastating retaliation if they are attacked first. The whole goal here is to drastically reduce the risk of someone accidentally triggering a war, while still maintaining a completely credible deterrence. It's a framework built for stability. But hey, atomic power isn't all about weapons and doom. A really major pillar of India's stance is pushing for peaceful nuclear energy. We're talking about enthusiastically supporting nuclear tech for domestic energy generation and scientific breakthroughs, all kept strictly under international safeguards. This ties into a much larger global trend, which is harnessing the atom for clean energy and real economic development. It proves this tech can do a lot of good beyond just military applications. That brings us to Section 3, the dual approach paradox, balancing power and peace. This is the core analytical layer of our briefing. This perfectly illustrates the crazy friction I mentioned earlier. Imagine doing two opposite things at the exact same time. On one side, India is actively modernizing its nuclear arsenal, like literally engineering advanced K-4 submarine-launched ballistic missiles. But on that very same day, Indian diplomats are sitting at international forums, forcefully demanding a universal, time-bound framework to get rid of all nuclear weapons globally. It sounds totally contradictory, doesn't it? But honestly, it's a paradox of survival. You have to secure your borders with hard power today while fighting for a safer world tomorrow. Let's look at Section 4, geopolitical and security challenges, and the reality of asymmetric threats. To really get why that modernization is happening, you just have to look at the neighborhood. It's basically a dual-front strategic nightmare. First up, you have China,
They are going through their own massive, rapid nuclear modernization, which obviously forces India to keep up and maintain a credible deterrence. Then, right next door, you have Pakistan, who is actively developing tactical, battlefield nuclear weapons and keeping a really tight military partnership with China. Combine those two, and you have immense tension on two borders at once. So if you're India, unilaterally disarming just isn't an option right now, not without totally risking your own sovereignty.
And what makes those regional threats even worse is a massive systemic gap. There are literally zero formal arms control agreements in the region. Think back to the Cold War for a second. Even when the US and the USSR hated each other, they eventually sat down and built these complex bilateral treaties so nobody did anything stupid. In South Asia, that diplomatic safety net just doesn't exist between these nuclear-armed neighbors. Without that institutional trust, managing these risks is incredibly complex and, frankly, pretty dangerous.
Now, let's look inward for a second, because there are internal challenges too. Look at the number 20. India actually ranks 20th out of 22 countries in the Nuclear Threat Initiative's Security Index for weapons-usable nuclear materials. Even though India is part of global efforts like the Nuclear Security Summit, that ranking is a stark reminder of real international concerns. Keeping a rapidly growing nuclear infrastructure absolutely safe and secure, that is a massive, ongoing challenge that requires constant vigilance.
On top of that, raw geopolitics is still blocking India from getting the peaceful technology it needs. Take the Nuclear Suppliers Group, the NSG. Back in 2008, the US gave India a historic special waiver for civil nuclear trade. Huge deal. But getting full membership into the NSG, that is still totally blocked, largely because China opposes it, which is heavily tied to Pakistan trying to get in too. The real-world impact is that this diplomatic roadblock stops India from accessing advanced global commerce that it desperately needs for its clean energy push. So because of all these crazy external pressures, especially with tactical nuclear weapons now in the mix, there's a really intense debate happening right now among strategists. They are seriously scrutinizing that no first use policy we talked about earlier. The big question is, does NFU actually scare off attackers in modern asymmetric warfare? Or is it time to rewrite the rules? This debate is absolutely central to the future of the region's entire military posture.
All right, Section 5, the strategic way forward. How do we balance deterrence and disarmament?
We've looked at the problems, so let's look at the actual solutions. Here is a step-by-step action plan to build real stability. Step 1. Heavily invest in peaceful tech. We're talking indigenous 700-megawatt pressurized heavy water reactors. This cuts down foreign reliance and creates clean power. Step 2. Boost transparency by working closely with the IAEA on verification. Step 3. Keep the dialogue open through consistent UN and regional diplomacy. And finally, Step 4. Take the lead in pushing for regional nuclear weapon-free zones. This takes the dream of world peace and turns it into concrete, actionable steps.
Finally, Section 6, Mastery and Final Review. Let's lock in those key takeaways. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of the crucial vocabulary you absolutely need to remember from today. First, NFU, no first use. That's the defensive shield, retaliation only. Second, NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. India rejects this because it's fundamentally discriminatory and favors the P5. Third, the dual approach, the crazy paradox of building modern weapons to survive today while advocating for a weapon-free tomorrow. Fourth, NSG, the Nuclear Suppliers Group, where geopolitics is blocking India's access to peaceful tech. And lastly, NWFZ, Nuclear Weapon-Free Zones, which is the practical roadmap for regional disarmament. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a real brain teaser. Can deterrence and disarmament truly coexist when the global playing field is this uneven? Or are we just stuck in a loop where trying to feel secure actually makes the world more dangerous? Keep that in the back of your mind as you watch the news, because grasping this paradox is the absolute key to understanding the future of international relations. Keep thinking critically, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.